The first week at work, my supervisor trained me to do various projects and computer programs. I tried to pay attention as best I could. I knew if I didn't, I would probably lose my job. It was hard trying to pay attention and process everything that was being said at once. I, however, tried to write as many notes as I could and asked my supervisor to repeat things without doing it many times. I did my best to write notes. At the first few days, I learned how to use the various computer programs used to navigate through the work premises. I learned how to use Lotus Notes. I found it kind of confusing to learn, but I found as long as I wrote notes, I was able to follow the steps. I also learned how to use a CAD program called MicroStation. Again, I probably wouldn't have been able to learn it all if I didn't write down the notes. And when I did, I was able to do that. Most of the days overall were okay, and I got my work done. However, I felt like I was somewhat slower than what other co-op students could do in regards to learning the work and getting it done. I had to ask a lot of questions a lot, but they encouraged me to do so because it was important to understand everything. The office staff and my supervisor was amazed at how much I knew about power lines. I constantly asked them questions about the different power lines and why certain voltages were used and other related stuff about power systems. They were always happy to answer, and they loved the fact that I was determined to learn more about the power system and the power grid. During the weekends, it was kind of like when I went to Kettering. I left Jackson, Michigan during the weekend so I could go back to Detroit to hang out with my friends. The ride was a little longer than the ride from Flint. It took an extra half hour. It was an hour and a half in total, but still, I really enjoyed the ride because I was so excited. I was so excited to go see my friends, and it was always an exciting moment. I hung out with Nikki most of the time during the weekend. I spent the night over her house a lot, and I really enjoyed hanging out and spending the night with her. We often made love. I was somewhat nervous when I hung out with Nikki at first because it was the beginning of our relationship, and I didn't want to do anything stupid to mess things up that would give her the wrong impression of me that wasn't true. However, as time went on, I started to become less nervous. One thing that helped in the beginning of the relationship was I hung out with her less amount of time and then gradually started hanging out with her more and more longer periods of time as I started becoming less nervous. I think this is a good tip for anybody to do when they first date because it kind of gives them a shorter amount of time to say the right things and let them know who they really are without wrong impression. I learned having guy time also helps improve the quality when you have a romantic girl time. I usually hung out with my Asperger friends as well as Dave Boucher. I usually did that often right before I left. I usually hung out with Nikki for most of the weekend and then stopped seeing her in the afternoon and then spent some guy time afterwards. I felt that was a really good balance and it benefited both me and her. Like weekends when I went to Kettering, I often felt fantastic when I headed back to Jackson after an awesome weekend with friends. After about 2 months, my girlfriend and I started getting closer and closer. I started to love Nikki more and more. And my feelings of her started to become more deeper than all the other relationships I've had in the past. I thought she was adorable and sweet and physically attractive. I loved how we had sex a lot. We hugged and kissed, and I also knew she would never cheat on me. I felt like I couldn't really trust other girls in spite of what she said, but with her, I could tell she wouldn't. Suddenly we started talking about the possibility of getting engaged. I was pretty excited about the idea. Even though I knew it was a bit early in the relationship and to jump the gun on such a decision, I was still excited about it. I also knew Dad and Nancy and my mom would eventually have to find out, and I had a feeling they weren't going to be very happy. I was worried about it, but that didn't stop me. I really loved her, and I decided asking her to marry me on Valentine's Day would be perfect. Me and Nikki routinely went to that Saturday dance at the Al-Anon place. We went there every Saturday on the weekends. Most people with disabilities often hung out there. I didn't really like going to that club because I thought it was kind of lame, but she loved going there, and I enjoyed, and it was something to do that was still fun. I decided to ask to marry her at the club. I bought her a $300 engagement ring. At 12 o'clock, the DJ suddenly turned off the music and did the opposite with the lights. It was dark, and it was silent. The DJ then flipped through a song that I specifically picked out for her. I suddenly proposed. Everybody was dead quiet, and I told, hey, I really think Nikki's a sweet person. I really enjoy looking forward to seeing her. And I said a bunch of other things that I really poured out to her and what I felt about her. As I was saying that, Nikki started to cry. And then I asked her, "Do you want to marry me?" And she of course said yes. We then danced to the specialist song that I picked out. I thought it was really great that I proposed to her because I really loved her. But for some odd reason, I knew I wasn't extremely excited. I thought maybe it was because it didn't hit me yet. I worked through the co-op. I continued to work throughout the co-op semester and hold on to this job. I really enjoyed working there. I learned a lot about power lines. I felt like I could learn stuff about power lines that I wouldn't be able to find anywhere else elsewhere. I did struggle in regards to understanding directions accurately. I was definitely right that my ability to follow instructions would probably make it hard in a job, and I was definitely seeing this. It was hard making sure to get everything done, and it was hard to pay attention to details. But I wasn't really worried about that. But it was kind of hard to, when I didn't follow directions, it was kind of hard to let my supervisor know because my supervisor did kind of get impatient. But all in all, I really wasn't quite worried about it. I felt like things were all right. The last day of my co-op semester finally came, and I had a work evaluation. Me and my supervisor were pretty close. We worked a lot together, and he was impressed with my knowledge of power lines. But he kind of sternly said, "All right, we're gonna talk. We're gonna have your evaluation." He kind of said it monotonously, and I was kind of thrown off by that for a second. I was like, We were about to review my work during this semester. My supervisor did not look happy when I was in the room. He read me the evaluation, talked about 5 different areas pertaining to my work. I scored poorly on just about every area. He told me the department is worried about my work performance and progress. He said he didn't like how I was extremely behind socially. That was really actually the biggest thing he was worried about. I was kind of both surprised and surprised at the same time. I wasn't surprised in the fact that, yes, I knew I had trouble socializing, even though I did make a lot of progress. However, I was kind of surprised that it was social skills were such a prominent importance in the workforce. He also said that I wasn't really making much progress in terms of job performance compared to most students. He said that he said that I was making a lot of mistakes, and a few of them actually caused some serious problems. For example, I accidentally deleted a couple of blueprints, power line blueprints, because I misunderstood I misunderstood the procedure of working through the files properly. He was not happy, and he told me that he hoped that he'd see improvements when I come back to my co-op semester this summer. I left work and headed back to Detroit directly afterward, and I felt upset and worried. I did not want to lose this job. Not only did I not want to lose this job, I would have felt extremely embarrassed about it too. I did not want to look at a power line. I was worried that when I would look at a power line, I wouldn't look at it the same way again. This following semester at Kettering University was tough and stressful. I took fewer classes compared to last semester. The classes I did take were more intense though, because they were about electricity. I loved electricity and knew a lot about it, but I was surprised to find that it was a struggle. I had trouble. I was starting to feel burned out with all the schoolwork, and I started finding it harder to stay focused and interested.